Have you ever found yourself asking the question, why are my pictures just not sharp? Hello everyone, welcome back to the new studio. Let's say you've got yourself a brand new mirrorless camera. Let's say it's entry level, perhaps even advanced level if you're feeling spicy. But you've found the step up from phone photography into camera photography just isn't giving you the results that you want. There may be lots of reasons as to why your pictures are not coming out crystal clear and sharp, but the one that we're going to tackle in today's video is shutter speed and how you might be using your shutter speed incorrectly. Sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming and a little bit disheartening when you've had your first day out with your new camera trying to really capture what you have in your mind to what you want to see on that little screen. First of all, try not to be disappointed because learning is a long process and everyone makes mistakes. And the thing is, when you're learning, you're allowed to make mistakes. Just try not to get disheartened because that's how camera equipment ends up at the back of drawers, never seen again, and you just think, oh, what a waste of time that was. And the thing is, photography can be such a joyful experience, even if things sometimes go a bit wrong. So today I'm going to talk you through a couple of techniques focusing on shutter speed as to how to improve the clarity and sharpness of your images. Welcome to the introduction of shutter speed. Sometimes it can be really frustrating when you set your heart on learning a new skill or a technique and it isn't living up to your expectations. I always try and remind myself in these situations that everyone starts somewhere, and that's never as an expert. It sounds corny as hell, but honestly, practice really does make perfect. And when you get to know the rules, you can bend them. If we already knew everything, we wouldn't need to learn anything. So let's go on location to Malaga City. There's a lot going on today and it's quite bright and sunny, so I feel like I'm really going to be able to show you guys what I mean by using different shutter speeds to create different feelings in the images that you take, and how not to get blurred photos. Street photography is an excellent medium in understanding how shutter speed works. Essentially, shutter speed is how fast the mechanical shutter in your camera moves to expose the sensor to light. Little dog. Little beastie. So Malaga has an eclectic mix of culture, people, speeds, architecture. There's definitely going to be something here today that I can use to show you exactly what I mean. Today, I'm on my Canon R8 and Louis is on the Osmo Pocket 3. I'll be using shutter priority mode in today's video so that the shutter speed is the only variable I can control during this shoot. On my camera, this is the TV mode on the control dial on the top. This mode allows the camera to make the decision for aperture, and because it's a really bright sunny day, I've decided to set my ISO to 100. These two images you can see here perfectly illuminate the difference between shutter speeds in an image. The image on the left, which has a motion blur on the cars, was shot with a shutter speed of 1/10 of a second, which is actually really slow. It's a setting that really would have to be used with a tripod if your camera had no image stabilization capabilities. As you've seen in my last video, although the R8 does not have IBIS, my RF24 lens does have optical image stabilization, and for this photo, I've really been able to push that to give a sense of motion for these cars. In the still image on the right, it was shot with a shutter speed of a 60th of a second, and this is widely regarded as the slowest handheld shutter speed you can get without introducing camera shake to the image. Starting really strong, I feel like you can see the difference a shutter speed makes to the crispness and the overall feeling of an image between these two pictures. Next, we have this building and crane composition. While there isn't anything particularly exciting about this image, apart from perhaps the strong lines and the sense of being small in comparison to the building, there are three aspects we can see within this image. There is a crane that would have been affected by winds this day. There's an aeroplane really far away in the sky that is frozen in place. And I was walking past this scene and I just stopped to take a handheld shot. This shutter speed is 2/100ths of a second. I'm going to zoom into this image at various points to show you how sharp and crisp this image still is. "2/100th of a second is considered to be a fast shutter speed. Low amounts of camera shake and low amounts of motion blur means that this image, with correct focus, is as sharp as it can be. Here we have another example of 2/100th of a second of shutter speed. There was a slight breeze in the air this day, so all of these leaves and foliage would have been moving, and a shutter speed of 2/100th of a second has frozen them in time with no motion blur. And that has really impacted the crispness and the clarity of this image. If I wanted to create something a little bit more dreamlike, and perhaps even use quite long shutter speeds of up to half a second to give a sense of the greenery and the foliage moving around these windows. A different example of using fast shutter speed can be seen with this alleyway with this yellow building right at the very end. This time, the use of the fast shutter speed of 2/100th of a second has enabled me to isolate the illuminated building at the end of this alleyway. Any slower of a shutter speed, and it would have let more light hit the sensor, and the darker areas of this image would have been lighter in comparison. And it just wouldn't have the same level of dramatic lighting contrast. So this is a bit of an interesting one, which I didn't quite expect to go the way that it did. But sometimes that's just the way that photography works. So I was waiting at this spot to capture an image that would recreate a very notorious scene depicting a motorcycle in motion. After seeing a handful of motorcycles go by, I decided to wait here and see if I could capture another one. But it just didn't happen. We waited for quite some time and one just did not go past. In the time that I was waiting though, I did capture this car at a shutter speed of 1/20th of a second, and I feel this really captures the essence of today's video. The car is fully in motion, while the surrounding scene is completely still. This is what I like to think of as a shutter speed sweet spot. Any slower of a shutter speed, and camera shake or haze might have been introduced to the non-moving objects. And if this was taken with a faster shutter speed, it would remove any sense of movement, and it would just be a picture of a car on a road. A faster shutter speed also lets you tell your camera that you want to capture less light. Combining this with a wider aperture allows for some very compelling storytelling within your photography. I'll be doing a specific aperture focus video shortly in this tutorial series if you're excited to learn a little bit more about introducing blur into your images. And here we have some other images from Malaga that I do enjoy, but I didn't think exactly fit the theme of today's video. So let's review some key points that you can take away from today's video. A fast shutter speed, something over 1/100th of a second, will make a captured image appear frozen in time. And that's a really useful point to remember when taking wildlife shots or portraiture, and even product photography. A slow shutter speed, something that we wouldn't usually consider handheld, let's say under 1/10th of a second, is going to make everything feel a little bit more dreamlike, almost giving an impression that time is happening. If you think about it, it's kind of like the difference between a still life painting and a watercolor. Both are technically paintings, but they evoke very different feelings. A great example of a slow shutter speed is any time that water is in motion. A slow shutter speed will make that water almost look like a beam of light in a strange way. One of the points to remember in today's video, when you make the step up from phone photography into camera photography, one of the things that you're going to have to get used to is your exposure settings. And shutter speed is a real anchor of the exposure triangle. Now, with really modern cameras, they have something called IBIS, which is in-body image stabilization. The camera itself may move the sensor to prevent sensor shift and counterbalance your micro movements that you are making as you take an image. Sometimes this is done electronically, or sometimes this is done optically. So sometimes the camera might have software built in to try and mitigate that, or sometimes the physical things within the camera or the lens move to counterbalance that. Back when I first started photography, it was really a rule of thumb to never shoot handheld less than 1/60th of a second. With the advantage of IBIS, you can kind of push that a lot lower, sometimes going down to even 1/10 of a second, which I did in fact use in today's video. Out of today's images, I think this one is my favorite. Let me know what your favorite image that I captured in today's video was. I'm very much starting to enjoy street photography a lot more these days than I ever did previously, and I look forward to exploring the genre a lot more here on the channel. Thank you for watching today, and I will see you in the next one. The exposure that it should be. There's a rat! I don't know if you saw that. It was just wiggling about like nobody's business. Well, as long as it doesn't come near me, that will be fine.